Oddly, the exact origin of the word God is unknown. All that we know for certain is that the word God is a relatively new European invention, which was never used in any of the ancient Judeo Christian scripture manuscripts, which were written in Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, or Latin. This situation is quite remarkable since there's a long history of people arguing and fighting over the name of God. Yet we don't even know where this European invented word God came from. Amusingly, none of the prophets, sages, and disciples who wrote down the various books of the Bible would recognize or understand this recently invented word, God, that people fight over. Welcome, family, to another edition of Stranger Thinking Media. This is Yeshayahu, where we bring you the gospel of Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, to address the problems of a modern world. Today's topic, the Eternal Mighty One, God by any other name, Part 4. Isaiah 42, I am Yahweh. That is my name, and my glory will I not give to another. Isaiah 48, for mine own sake, even for mine own sake, will I do it. For how should my name be polluted? And I will not give my glory unto another. Isaiah 52, therefore my people shall know my name. Therefore they shall know in that day that I am he, Yahweh, that doth speak. Behold, it is I. So, we're back again, and thanks for joining us. I'm going to continue with the series, A God by Any Other Name. And what I'm trying to do here is emphasize the actual name of the mighty one in heaven that created all things. And he has he has one name, but he is known by his other attributes as well. Even his name is his most powerful attribute. So the reason this is important is because I think we don't have a good understanding of what it is that we're worshiping. And I specifically have a video that's coming out to describe what I call catchphrases that make the understanding of the Most High very opaque. Meaning phrases that are like cover-all phrases that mean nothing, but it stops any more dialogue. And I'll give you an example of that. Trinity. So people say God's a Trinity. But that's the end of that discussion. But what does that mean? So I got a video that's going to come out and it's going to address all the little catchphrases. I call them stoppers because after you use that term, all discussion kind of stops. So you throw out a term and everybody goes, "Oh yeah." But what does that mean? You know. And so I'm deep diving. It is important because if you don't understand what you're worshiping, like another catchphrase I want to throw out is angel. You know, what does that mean? I know by definition it means messenger, but we throw that title on everything in heaven, you know? So what I'm going to try to do is clarify, church, what does that mean? Or, that term really obscures a lot of understanding. And so I'm going to come out with a video, hopefully in the next month, that addresses all these catchphrases. But in the meantime, I want to focus on understanding first who the true creator of heaven and earth, who he is specifically. I want to zero in on his frequency. He has his one frequency. You You have to understand that he's very. You think the God, or I'm going to use that term God, so because you understand that, but the Elohim God of the Old Testament says, "I change not," and yet by the time you get to the New Testament, people are putting on him this personality that is 180 degrees out from the personality in the Old Testament. That couldn't be further from the truth because in the Old Testament, this deity, everything he does points to the work of the Messiah. So he hasn't changed at all. He's showing what happens when you're under law. Now, you obey the law, everything goes great. You disobey the law, you're cursed. So he's teaching us this real time. It's like motor memory. You know, human beings are funny. Unless you go through something, you don't tend to remember it as well. When you go through it, it tends to become internalized. You remember, you understand. You don't just know, you understand. And so Yah is showing us how his words are true by allowing us to go through the trials of disobedience. And of course, in the end times, in the latter days, it culminates into, you see what happens when you disobey me? It started with a fruit in the Garden of Eden. Now you're about to nuke each other out of existence. It's all the same thing. It's strictly disobedience. And he's going to let us get to the point where we begin to annihilate ourselves. But he said he shall cut those days short. And his goal is obviously not to destroy humans. He's got a plan. But he knows he has to get us to a point where we not only know, because you read something, you know it, but you go through it, you understand it. And so he's going to let us go our own way until we understand that our own way leads to destruction. And it would have been better from the outset to have been obedient. We could have eaten from the tree of life, you know. But anyway, I digress a little. But here we're going to focus on his true name. And so in the previous videos, we went over where the word God, G-O-D, comes from. And then we elaborated a little more. Then we got down to the book of Enoch, where the term God-Driel, turns out God-Driel was the one that deceived Eve in the garden. So, you know, let's break it down. So remember, I'm going to be quoting out of the King James, which is obviously Old English. And so there are words he uses, and I'm not saying, you know, he's purposely trying to deceive. That's obviously not what he was doing. He was transliterating Greek, Latin, and even Hebrew scriptures into an English format that would be understandable to the English people of the time. So their word for the Most High Creator in England, in Scotland, and whatever was G-O-D, God. And so here we are in Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 26. And God said, let us make man in our image. We're going to come back to that. After our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Now, the word translated as God is the Hebrew word Elohim. Sometimes pronounced Elohim, but generally pronounced Elohim. Now, in Hebrew, anytime you add the I am on the end of a word, or HIM, depending on it, it's like in English putting the letter S on the end of something, meaning more than one. It's it pluralizes the word. So, for instance, car or cars, duck or ducks. So adding "eem" on the end of something just is like adding the letter S. You're making it plural. So if you go back to verse 26, and God said, or and the Elohim said, and then it's substantiated in the next part of the sentence, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So they're talking in the plural. So the question would be, who's the us? And it's not my intention to get all into that, but understand that this Elohim is a designation for the creator of heaven and earth and all things that exist, right? So let's keep that in mind for now. And we'll, in another video, we'll dig into that. Or you can read the book, God Through the Eyes of the Hebrews, The Elephant in the Temple. So I go into a lot of detail on it in that book. That'll be coming out soon. I haven't come up with a date yet for its release, but it's written, and it's pretty much ready to go. So I can release it at any time. So be on the lookout. But this Elohim is translated as God, and it's kind of an overall term. It's an attribute. It actually means, really and truthful, it means the powers or the mighty one. That's kind of all it means. The powers or the mighty ones. Something greater than man. Something that men relate to and acknowledge is greater than themselves. These, remember, it's plural. So these beings that are greater than men. That's kind of what they're saying. They're recognizing there are beings greater than us that are out there in the heavenly places, right? I think that's all I want to mention on this, but just remember Elohim, the mighty ones. And then in Genesis 13, now this gets a little more interesting. By the time you get to Abram, it's not Abraham yet, it's Abram. It switches up, and I've heard critics say, see, they're changing up their gods. See, they got a new god they're worshiping. No, I mean, it's always crazy when people who have no inkling, no understanding of the Bible or the scriptures, they may be very intelligent people, and may have all sorts of PhDs behind their names, but they don't have the spirit, and they are totally lost. They think they found something, but they've really found nothing. There is a reason why now Abram starts saying Yahweh. And so in Genesis 13, verse 1, and Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. And Abraham was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journey from the south, even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abram called on the name of Yahweh. But remember, King James does it, instead of using the term Yahweh, he replaces it with the term Lord in capitals. But understand, that's not what it says in Hebrew. It says Yahweh. That's the name of the creator of heaven and earth, is Yahweh. But Yahweh is a singular designation. It's not a plural designation. And there's a reason for that. And again, read the book, God Through the Eyes of the Hebrews. It goes all into that. This is not for this video here. But essentially, I'll give you this much. There's a point in time where Abraham stops saying Elohim and he starts saying Yahweh because of the meaning. Yahweh is him revealing his name through covenant. The people who call him Yahweh are his covenanted people, his inheritance. Are you following? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Gentiles, meaning everybody and anybody really, could say Elohim. But there's only specific people who he reveals himself as Yahweh. There's a difference. It's a covenant term. Call me by my covenant name because it's kind of like when you get married. You know, if somebody was trying to contact your wife, they might say Mrs. Jackson or whatever. But you generally wouldn't call your wife Mrs. Jackson. You'd probably call her something like, I don't know, honey, or what, by her first name, right? It's a more intimate relationship. So when he reveals himself as Yahweh, he's revealing himself as your husband. You are in a marriage relationship at that point with him. Are you picking this up? When you refer to them as Elohim, it's something different. It's not a covenant relationship. It doesn't become a marriage until he chooses Abraham and his descendants. And we could dig into that more at length, but not in this video. So what we come up with is there's two major terms for the creator of heaven and earth. It's the Elohim, which means the mighty ones, plural, and there's a reason. Don't just think that's an accident. And I've heard some people say, well, the Elohim are all the spiritual beings in heaven. Yes and no. We'll get into that in another video. But the angels did not create man. But yet he says the Elohim created them. So if he's not including angels in that definition, in that particular case, because that's not what the angels do. Or are you thinking that the angels had to help God create man? In fact, as you can see by what's happening today, there's a lot of angels who were pissed off that Yah was creating humans. So thus rebellion, or disobedience. But anyways, the Elohim referred to, yes, all the beings in heaven are called, Elohim. But the Elohim that create man is a little more intimate than that, and we'll get into that in another video. So I'm not going to go so much in depth in this, because if I go in depth in this, then I give away all the secrets of the book. So I'd like for you to read God Through the Eyes of the Hebrews, because it goes a little more in depth, and hopefully I don't confuse you in the book, but there's some good stuff in there. So in summary, Acts chapter 4, neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. And up top is the Hebrew Yod He Vav He Shin Vav Ayin. And remember, Hebrew is spelled from right to left. In fact, its sentences also read from right to left. A lot of people can't get that, and they read sentences completely backwards and try to figure it out. What is it saying? But it reads and is spelled right to left. So embedded in the name Yahweh is Yod, which is a hand, He, which is a man with his arms raised in praise or worship, Vav, which represents a spike or tent peg, a nail, essentially, and then He again, with the man lifting his arms in worship and praise. So that's the word Yahweh, and that would be the name of the creator. But embedded at the end of it is Shin Vav Ayin, two front teeth, tent peg, and eye. And spelled out, that would be Yahusha. Or some people would say Yahushua or Yahshua. So if you actually go into the actual Hebrew, oftentimes it's sometimes spelled this way, but usually it's more abbreviated. It's Yod Hey Vav Hey Shin Ayin. So that would be Yahusha, essentially. So that is generally the more correct way of saying it. There's lots of videos on that, books written. It's not hard to find if you really want to know what his name was. And in the King James, they translate this name as Jesus, which is nowhere even in the general vicinity of what you see here. We can also dig into where that name comes from. If you really think it through, the name Jesus is only about 400 years old because the letter J wasn't even invented until 1550. It wasn't even in wide use until about 1650 in England, right? So in the original edition of King James, the 1611 version, the letter J is nowhere in it. So how do you say the name of the Son of God if there's no letter J? The answer to that is Jesus. I just don't like the way that sounds. Jesus. So are you picking up what I'm putting down? Let's get back to the fact that the Son of Man was a Hebrew of the line of the tribe of Yehuda, Judah. And he was given a name that literally is the same name as the guy we call Joshua in the Old Testament. Joshua fit the battle. You would be more correct calling him Joshua than Jesus. So why did they not do that? There are reasons for it, and they're primarily political reasons. So if there's only one name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved, I think it's a good idea that we actually know what that name is. And, you can argue all you want or make excuses if you want. Yeah, God winks in ignorance. But when he reveals to you what the truth is, you no longer have that to lean on. You now know. Study to show thyself approved at that point. Like, is what this guy's saying? Is he spitting facts? Is he telling the truth? Or do I want to just, stay in what I call Babylon and ignore the truth? So, it's obvious what men are more inclined to do. I mean, go back to the Garden of Eden, and Yah says, you can eat anything in the garden, just don't eat from that tree. That's the tree of knowledge. Don't want you to eat. You eat from that, you die. And oh, by the way, there's this tree of life thing. What's the thing that men did? The one thing Yah told them not to do. That's human nature. Because human beings are stiff-necked and rebellious, and God purposely chose the most stiff-necked and rebellious people on the planet to work through. I mean, it's kind of funny, it's like he really wants to drive a point home, so he's going to choose this group, to work with. But just know that there's a plan in place, and Yah is not messing around. So that's all I had for today's video. Farewell, family. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for continually supporting my content. If you did enjoy this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. And share this with your friends and family. I'm sure they'd find it interesting as well. I'm very excited to continue this journey with you. I thank you all for bringing certain stories to my attention. They're always welcome. Put them in the comment sections. I'll research them and get to them when I can. And for continually keeping me updated with certain events around the world. I very much appreciate you all. Shout out to the channel members. We're almost at that 1,000 member mark. So keep up the good work. You will be blessed for it. May everybody have a beautiful and blessed day. It was in the body of Messiah, Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ of Nazareth. And I'll see you all on the next video. Shalom.